Imagine for a moment that you are on a lush green hill in Galilee over 2,000 years ago. The sun is gently shining, a cool breeze caresses your face, and in front of you stands a man who would change the world with his words, Jesus of Nazareth. He is neither a powerful politician nor a famous philosopher. He is the Son of God, ready to deliver the most revolutionary sermon in history, the Sermon on the Mount. Now you might be wondering what makes this sermon so special. Well, my friends, it challenged empires, transformed hearts, and even after 2 millennia remains as relevant as the day it was delivered. Have you ever stopped to think about why we still talk about this sermon today? It's because Jesus' words have a transformative power. When he said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven," he was turning the world upside down. In a society that valued wealth and power, he exalted the humble and spiritually needy. And this, my dear friends, is just the beginning. Every word of the Sermon on the Mount carries deep meaning that can transform the way we view success and happiness. Let's consider a practical example. Think of someone who has achieved great material success but feels empty inside. Jesus is speaking directly to this person. He is saying that true happiness does not lie in accumulating riches, but in recognizing our spiritual need. This is the first step to experiencing the kingdom of heaven here and now. It's not about being materially poor, but about understanding that we need something greater than ourselves. Now imagine a world where forgiveness replaces revenge, where compassion triumphs over selfishness, and love conquers hate. It seems like an impossible dream, right? But this is exactly the kind of world Jesus was proposing in the Sermon on the Mount. And he didn't just propose it, he also gave us the tools to make it a reality. In a world divided by conflicts and hatred, the teachings of the Sermon on the Mount offer a radical alternative. Jesus challenged everything with his words, "You have heard that it was said, eye for eye and tooth for tooth. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person." He wasn't just teaching, he was proposing a new way for us to relate to one another and to God. He was proposing a revolution in human relationships. Let's dive deeper into this idea. When Jesus began teaching the crowds, he spoke about the Beatitudes, which are powerful statements that begin with blessed. These are not simple motivational phrases. They are a radical redefinition of what it means to be truly blessed. For example, blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. In a world that celebrates aggressiveness, Jesus exalts meekness, strength under control. It's a completely new vision of power and leadership. And we can't forget the promises Jesus made. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. He's not talking about a casual desire for things to improve, but a deep yearning for justice. It's a call to action, not just a wish. He's challenging us to actively work for a more just world, to be the change we want to see. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus also spoke about mercy. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. In a world that cries out for revenge, Jesus invites us to choose compassion. Mercy is not just a feeling, it's an action. It's choosing to forgive when we have every reason to hold a grudge. And that, my friends, is revolutionary. Finally, one of the most challenging parts of the sermon is when Jesus addresses the love of enemies. Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. This goes against every natural instinct we have. Love our enemies? Pray for those who mistreat us? Yes, that's what Jesus calls us to do. And he explains why. So that we may be children of our Father in heaven. He makes the sun rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. The Beatitudes are without a doubt one of the most well-known parts of the Sermon on the Mount. When Jesus said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven," he wasn't just speaking beautiful words. He was redefining the idea of happiness and success. In today's world, where happiness is often measured by material possessions and social status, this message sounds almost like a silent revolution. Imagine then the power of these words 2,000 years ago, in a society that idolized wealth and power. Jesus continues with a series of statements that, at first glance, seem paradoxical. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted, tells us that mourning and pain have a legitimate place in our lives. He reminds us that there is no shame in feeling sadness, and that there is comfort and healing waiting for those who recognize and accept their own vulnerabilities. In a world that often pressures us to be strong and happy all the time, this message brings profound relief. Let's think of a practical example. Imagine someone who recently lost a loved one. Social expectations may lead them to get over this loss quickly and move on. But Jesus tells us that it is good to mourn, that comfort will come. This promise of comfort can be a powerful balm, offering a more compassionate and humane perspective on suffering. Jesus' words don't stop there. He proclaims, "Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth." In a world that often values aggressiveness and domination, Jesus exalts meekness. Being meek is not being weak, but rather possessing controlled strength and a compassionate heart. Think of the difference this perspective can make in our daily interactions, turning conflicts into opportunities to demonstrate empathy and understanding. And when Jesus says, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled," he calls us to a life of action and purpose. It's not enough to wish for justice. We must actively work to achieve it. This call to action can inspire many people to get involved in social causes, to fight for human rights, to make a difference in their communities. It's a powerful reminder that our actions matter, and that we can be agents of change. Jesus' message of mercy is also deeply transformative. "Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy," teaches us that true strength lies in the ability to forgive. In a world often thirsty for revenge, choosing mercy is an act of courage. Imagine how our relationships could be different if we all practiced a little more mercy, if we gave people the benefit of the doubt, if we forgave more quickly. And then we have, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God." This is a call to authenticity, to be true in our intentions and actions. In a world full of masks and falsities, being pure in heart is a form of resistance. It's living with integrity, being the same person in public and in private. This integrity creates a solid foundation for all our interactions, building mutual trust and respect. When Jesus speaks about peacemakers, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God," he is calling us to be builders of peace. In a world full of conflicts, being a peacemaker is hard work, but essential. This can mean mediating conflicts at home, at work, or in the community, always seeking solutions that promote harmony and collective well-being. And finally, Jesus reminds us that those who suffer persecution because of righteousness are blessed. "Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." This is a message of hope for all those who face injustices for doing what is right. It's an encouragement to remain firm in our convictions, knowing that divine justice is on our side. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus addresses the concept of love and forgiveness in a revolutionary way, when he states, "You have heard that it was said, 'Eye for eye and tooth for tooth.' But I tell you, do not resist an evil person." He is challenging a deeply rooted norm in society at that time. This countercultural approach was not just a theory, it was a call to practical and daily action. Jesus invites us to break the cycle of revenge, offering an alternative that promotes peace and reconciliation. Think of an everyday situation, like a disagreement with a coworker. The natural response might be to retaliate or hold a grudge. However, following Jesus' teaching, we can choose to forgive and try to understand the other person's point of view. This attitude not only diffuses the conflict, but also paves the way for a more harmonious and collaborative work environment. It's a practical application of the love and forgiveness that Jesus taught us. Moreover, when Jesus says, "Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you," he challenges us to go beyond the ordinary. Loving friends and family is easy, but loving those who harm us requires extraordinary strength and grace. This teaching takes us to a level of spiritual maturity that can transform difficult relationships into opportunities for growth and redemption. Imagine how our communities could be different if more people practiced this kind of unconditional love. Forgiveness is one of the most powerful forms of love. Jesus, in forgiving those who crucified him, gave us the greatest example of forgiveness. "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing," he said. This act of extreme forgiveness teaches us that, regardless of the severity of the offense, there is always room for mercy. This kind of forgiveness can liberate both the forgiver and the forgiven, creating a cycle of healing and renewal that can reverberate for generations. Let's consider a practical application of this principle. Imagine a family conflict where deep wounds have accumulated over the years. One family member decides to start the process of forgiveness, not expecting anything in return. This decision can break the cycle of bitterness and initiate a process of reconciliation. Forgiveness, as taught by Jesus, has the power to transform not only individuals, but entire communities. Jesus also emphasizes the importance of forgiving repeatedly. When Peter asked how many times he should forgive his brother, Jesus replied, 70 times 7. This is not about an exact number, but about a continuous willingness to forgive. This continuous willingness is essential to maintaining healthy and lasting relationships. Forgiving repeatedly requires a deep understanding of God's love for us and the willingness to extend that love to others. In the context of our daily lives, this attitude can be applied to both small and large conflicts. From forgiving a friend for a small offense to forgiving a significant mistake at work, each act of forgiveness is a step towards a more peaceful and harmonious life. It is an invitation to live more lightly and generously, letting go of the burdens of resentment and revenge. Jesus also shows us that love and forgiveness are not just for others, but for ourselves as well. Forgiving oneself can be one of the most challenging but also one of the most liberating acts. Recognizing our own mistakes, learning from them, and accepting God's forgiveness is crucial for our spiritual growth and emotional well-being. This practice of self-forgiveness can help us live more fully and freely. Finally, Jesus' message of love and forgiveness in the Sermon on the Mount is a call to personal and social transformation. He invites us to live in a way that challenges cultural and social norms, promoting a culture of peace and reconciliation. It is a call to be agents of change in our communities, spreading love and forgiveness wherever we are. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus emphasizes the importance of purity of heart with the statement, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God." This declaration goes beyond external appearances and challenges us to live with authenticity and integrity. In a world where masks and falsehoods are common, being pure in heart is a form of resistance. It means being the same person in public and in private, without duplicity or deceit. For example, think of someone who always acts with honesty, even when no one is watching. This person does not lie on their resume to get a job, does not cheat on their taxes, and treats everyone with respect and dignity. This person's integrity is a powerful testimony to their character. Living with a pure heart is a call for each of us, so that we can build a solid foundation of trust and respect in all our relationships. Another important aspect of purity of heart is the intention behind our actions. Jesus calls us to examine our motives, asking why we do what we do. Are we helping others out of genuine compassion or to gain praise? Are we being kind because we truly care or to manipulate the situation to our advantage? Having a pure heart means acting with sincerity and selflessness, seeking the good of others without ulterior motives. In practice, we can apply this principle in various areas of our lives. At work, this might mean not participating in gossip or power plays, but working with honesty and collaboration. In our personal relationships, it might mean being open and transparent about our feelings and intentions, avoiding emotional games and manipulations. This commitment to integrity strengthens our bonds and allows us to build deeper and more meaningful relationships. Moreover, purity of heart is connected to our spiritual connection. Jesus states that those who are pure in heart will see God. This implies a direct relationship between our integrity and our ability to experience the divine presence. The more we live according to truth and justice, the closer we feel to God and His love. It is a continuous journey of self-knowledge and spiritual growth. It is important to remember that purity of heart does not mean perfection. We all make mistakes and have moments of weakness. What Jesus asks of us is a heart oriented towards truth, willing to recognize and correct its flaws. This includes asking for forgiveness when we are wrong, and making a genuine effort to improve. This humility and openness to transformation are essential to maintaining a pure heart. In everyday life, this pursuit of purity can be challenging. We are constantly tempted to compromise our values for convenience or personal gain. However, each decision made with integrity strengthens us and brings us closer to the ideal that Jesus presents. In the long run, these small acts of fidelity to our conscience build a resilient and admirable character. Finally, integrity is a light in a world that often seems dominated by darkness. When we live with a pure heart, we become living examples of God's love and justice. Our actions speak louder than words, inspiring others to follow the same path. This is the true transformation that Jesus desires for all of us. A life lived in truth and love, reflecting the divine light in every interaction. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus addresses the issue of anxiety in a profoundly comforting way. He says, "Do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear." These words are a call to unwavering trust in God, reminding us that our value goes beyond worldly concerns. In a world where stress and anxiety are almost epidemic, this message of trust is more relevant than ever. Imagine someone who is constantly worried about their job, their family, and their finances. This anxiety can be paralyzing, affecting their mental and physical health. Jesus invites us to release these worries, trusting that God will provide for our needs. This does not mean we should be irresponsible or careless, but rather that we should live with the confidence that we are not alone in our struggles. It is a daily practice of faith, believing that even in difficulties, God is taking care of us. To illustrate this trust, Jesus uses examples from nature. He says, "Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they?" This simple yet powerful example reminds us that God's provision is constant and faithful. The birds do not worry about the future, but live in the present, trusting that they will find what they need to survive. In the same way, we are called to live each day with faith and gratitude, knowing that God takes care of us. In practice, this trust can be cultivated through small changes in our routine. Starting the day with moments of gratitude, for example, can change our perspective. Instead of focusing on worries, we can list 3 things we are grateful for. This not only reduces anxiety, but also connects us more deeply with God's presence in our lives. Another example is the practice of daily meditation and prayer, which helps us center our minds and hearts in divine peace. Jesus also teaches us not to worry about the future. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. This is a call to live in the present, to deal with today's challenges without overloading our minds with the problems of tomorrow. It is a liberating practice that allows us to enjoy each moment of life more fully, without being oppressed by the uncertainties of the future. Of course, this is not easy. We live in a society that values planning and foresight, often at the expense of mental peace. However, Jesus offers us a radical alternative: to trust God for each day, without accumulating worries. This can be practiced through conscious decisions, such as turning off the news from time to time, limiting time on social media, and dedicating more time to activities that bring us joy and peace. Another way to cultivate this trust is through service to others. When we focus on helping those in need, our own anxiety tends to diminish. Helping a neighbor, volunteering at a charity, or simply listening to someone going through difficulties can remind us that we are all connected and that we can be instruments of God's provision for others. This act of service not only benefits the recipient, but also the giver. Finally, trusting in God is not a passive stance but an active and courageous choice. It requires daily practice and constant renewal of the mind and spirit. It is a commitment to live according to the principles of God's kingdom, placing our faith above our anxieties. This trust gives us strength and resilience to face any challenge, knowing that we are in the hands of a loving and faithful God. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus challenges our priorities and our relationship with material things by saying, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal." This message prompts us to reflect on what we truly value in life and where we are investing our time and energy. In a consumerist world, these words are an invitation to focus on what is eternal and truly meaningful. Consider someone who dedicates their entire life to accumulating wealth and material goods. They may achieve financial success, but might also feel an inner emptiness that money cannot fill. Jesus teaches us that earthly riches are temporary and can be destroyed or stolen. Instead, he invites us to seek heavenly treasures, which are eternal and indestructible. This perspective calls us to reevaluate our goals and focus on spiritual values such as generosity, compassion, and love for others. To illustrate, consider someone who decides to live more simply to help others. This person might choose not to buy that luxury car or bigger house, and instead use that money to support causes that promote justice and community well-being. This kind of choice reflects the pursuit of the treasures in heaven that Jesus mentions. Living with less attachment to material things can make room for a life richer in meaning and purpose. Jesus also emphasizes that where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. This statement invites us to examine where our heart truly lies. If we are constantly worried about material goods, it is a sign that our heart might be in the wrong place. However, if our thoughts and actions are focused on serving others and living according to the principles of God's kingdom, we are investing in treasures that have eternal value. In daily life, reorienting our priorities can be challenging, especially in a society that constantly encourages us to consume more. However, small changes can make a significant difference. It can start with simple gestures like donating clothes we no longer wear, spending less on superfluous items, and investing more time in activities that promote spiritual and community well-being. These actions not only benefit others, but also help us grow spiritually. Furthermore, Jesus reminds us that we cannot serve two masters. No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. This teaching is a call to choose between devotion to God and devotion to money. He challenges us to decide what will take the primary place in our lives. Serving God requires us to place our trust in Him above anything material. Living according to this principle might involve making difficult decisions, such as changing jobs to one that pays less, but is more aligned with our values, or dedicating more time to volunteering and less to financial gain. These choices reflect a trust that God will provide for our needs, and that true happiness and satisfaction come from a life lived in faithfulness to Him, not in the accumulation of wealth. Finally, Jesus calls us to a lifestyle of simplicity and trust. He invites us to seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, with the promise that all other things will be added to us. This promise frees us from the anxiety of needing to control everything, and allows us to live with a serene trust in God's provision. It is an invitation to a fuller life, richer in meaning and less burdened by material worries. The Lord's Prayer, taught by Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount, is one of the most well-known and recited prayers in the world. When Jesus said, "Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name," He was introducing a revolutionary way of relating to God. By calling God Father, He invites us to deep intimacy and trust, while also acknowledging His holiness and greatness. This prayer is a model not only of how we should pray, but also of how we should live. Starting a prayer with Our Father means recognizing that we are part of a large spiritual family. It reminds us that our prayers are not just individual petitions, but expressions of a community of faith. We are connected to each other through our Heavenly Father. This sense of community can transform the way we see and treat others, promoting a spirit of solidarity and compassion. It is a call to live in unity and harmony, reflecting God's love in our daily interactions. When we say, "Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven," we are asking for God's kingdom to manifest here and now. This challenges us to live according to the values of the kingdom, promoting justice, peace, and love in all areas of our lives. It is not just a future hope, but a present commitment to act according to God's will. In our daily lives, this might mean being more just in our actions, more peacemaking in our relationships, and more loving in our community. The phrase, "Give us today our daily bread," teaches us to trust in God's daily provision. In a society that values accumulation and long-term planning, this prayer reminds us to live one day at a time, trusting that God will provide for our needs. It is a call to simplicity and trust, recognizing our dependence on God. We can apply this in our lives by being more grateful for what we have today and less anxious about what will come tomorrow. "Forgive us our debts, as we also have forgiven our debtors," is a powerful reminder of the importance of forgiveness. Jesus teaches us that the forgiveness we receive from God is directly linked to the forgiveness we offer to others. This is a daily practice of letting go of resentments and seeking reconciliation. In daily life, This might mean forgiving a friend who has offended us, giving a second chance to a coworker, or resolving a family conflict with an open and forgiving heart. And then comes the petition, "And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil." This phrase acknowledges our vulnerability and the constant need for divine protection. Jesus teaches us to ask for help to resist the temptations we face and to seek God's protection against evil. This prayer is a reminder that we are not alone in our struggles and that we can always turn to God for strength and guidance. In daily life, we can apply this by being more aware of the temptations around us and actively seeking divine help to overcome them. The Lord's Prayer ends with a glorification of God. "For yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever." This conclusion leads us to recognize God's sovereignty over all things and to give Him the glory He deserves. It is a way to conclude our prayers with gratitude and praise, reaffirming our faith in God's goodness and power. In our lives, this can translate into a habit of praising God not just in words, but also in actions, living in a way that honors His name. Practicing the Lord's Prayer daily can transform our spirituality and behavior. Each phrase of this prayer carries profound meaning and can guide our actions and attitudes. By internalizing and living according to these words, we draw closer to God and reflect His light to the world. It is a continuous journey of spiritual growth and alignment with the divine will. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus warns against hypocritical judgment with the statement, "Do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you." This is a powerful call to self-reflection and empathy. In a world quick to point out others' faults, Jesus reminds us to first examine our own. He invites us to look inward, to correct our own faults before criticizing others. To illustrate, imagine a situation where you observe someone making a mistake. The natural response might be to judge them quickly. However, following Jesus' teaching, the first question we should ask is, am I, in any way, making a similar mistake? This practice of introspection can transform our approach, making us more compassionate and less prone to snap judgments. It is a daily exercise in humility and honesty with ourselves. Jesus uses a vivid metaphor to illustrate this point. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? This humorous image reminds us how easy it is to see the small faults in others while ignoring the big problems in ourselves. This is an invitation to rigorous self-analysis. In everyday life, this might mean taking time to evaluate our own behaviors and attitudes, always seeking to improve before criticizing others. Moreover, Jesus teaches us that we should approach others with a measure of empathy. When we understand that everyone has their own flaws and struggles, we are more likely to treat others with kindness and understanding. At work, for example, instead of harshly criticizing a colleague for a mistake, we can offer help and support to help them improve. This approach not only strengthens relationships, but also creates a more positive and collaborative environment. Empathy also extends to how we interpret others' actions. Jesus calls us to assume the best of intentions. Instead of presuming the worst about people's motivations, we can choose to believe that they are doing the best they can with the resources and knowledge they have. This shift in perspective can alleviate many conflicts and misunderstandings, promoting a culture of peace and cooperation. Another important aspect is correction with humility. Jesus does not tell us to ignore others' mistakes, but to approach them with a spirit of love and humility. First, take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. This means that before offering correction, we should ensure we are in a place of integrity and clarity. And when we correct, we should do so with the intention of helping, not condemning. In practice, this might mean apologizing first when we know we are wrong before pointing out others' mistakes. It can also mean approaching difficult conversations with a spirit of kindness, saying something like, "I have also made mistakes, and I would like to help you overcome this challenge." This approach builds a bridge of trust and mutual respect, facilitating acceptance and positive change. Finally, Jesus' teaching on judgment and empathy calls us to a life of greater self-awareness and kindness. He challenges us to live in a way that reflects God's love and grace, treating others as we would like to be treated. This daily practice can transform our relationships and bring us closer to the abundant and full life that Jesus promises. It is a continuous invitation to be better versions of ourselves, on a path of growth and compassion. Now that we have journeyed through the profound and transformative teachings of the Sermon on the Mount, it's time to reflect on how we can apply all this knowledge to our lives. Jesus left us a legacy of practical wisdom that not only challenges cultural and social norms, but also invites us to personal and spiritual transformation. Each of these teachings, if applied, can lead us to a fuller life, rich in meaning and alignment with divine principles. Think about the areas of your life where you can implement these lessons. How can you be more compassionate and less judgmental? In what ways can you show love and forgiveness, even in difficult situations? And what does it mean for you to seek treasures in heaven instead of clinging to material wealth? Start small, with concrete actions in your daily life. For example, when you feel the temptation to judge someone, remember to first look at your own flaws. Or when dealing with anxiety, trust in God's provision and live one day at a time. Remember, true transformation comes from within. Jesus calls us to live with integrity, purity of heart, and unwavering trust in God. This is not an easy journey, but it is deeply rewarding. Challenge yourself to apply one of these lessons every day, and observe how it can change your perspective and your relationships. Be an agent of peace and reconciliation in your environment, someone who spreads love and mercy wherever you go. Now I want to ask you some thought-provoking questions. What are you willing to change in your life to live more aligned with these teachings? How can you be the light and salt in your community, reflecting God's love in your daily actions? And finally, what is stopping you from starting this transformation today? Think about it and make a conscious decision to engage in this spiritual journey. If you found these reflections valuable and want to continue learning and growing, subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. This way, you will stay updated with more teachings and continue your journey of spiritual and personal growth. Together, we can build a community of faith and action, inspired by Jesus' teachings in the Sermon on the Mount.